Relish, pleasing or zestful flavor.
A quantity just sufficient to flavor, to be pleased or gratified by. Enjoy.
We are hoping that what we bring to your table today might add some spice to your life.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Relish. I'm here with Don Patterson as always. Don, how are you doing?
I'm doing good in my swinging chair here where I can go back and forth. Keeps life moving. I'm doing all right.
It does.
It's been a good summer.
Yeah. Good, busy summer, but
yeah.
it's the way we like it around here. So
yeah, not a dull moment anywhere.
All right. So today I believe you have the third fruit of the Spirit, which is peace for us.
Yeah. And peace is, I think what peace does is, well, often in our English language, we reduce it. Oh, peace, dude, back down in the 70s and 80s. And in reality, the biblical concept of peace goes much deeper. And Paul, of all people, when he was writing the Galatians and putting together these fruits of the Spirit, probably did a lot of reflection on his own cultural background in peace. So the word that we see in Galatians would be originates, but it's translating a word shalom from the Old Testament, which would have been part of Paul's DNA, if you will, because they said shalom, that was their hello, and shalom was their goodbye. And, sometimes those things that we use commonly lose their meaning over time. And I think what Paul was trying to do and identifying as a fruit of the Spirit is going all the way back in his cultural roots to the shalom that he would have grown up with as a Jew. And that understanding goes all the way back to Genesis. In a way, the shalom of the Old Testament was desiring to recreate the relationships, the way things were when God created the world before sin in chapter 3 Genesis. So the root word of peace is, while we often connect it with the absence of conflict, even, between us, conflict, and conflict between us and God or others, it goes back to making things whole again. In fact, one of the meanings of peace is, may in the greeting of peace, may all the brokenness in your life go away. May God bless you with the wholeness He created you with. May God give you a sense in your heart that things are right. And that's the kind of peace that is a fruit of the Spirit. And even that isn't quite getting the whole thing. So we go back in the Old Testament and we see in Isaiah chapter 2 that, there's a desire in the midst of war, because Isaiah's writing and it's right before a major conflict, and the nation of Israel is taken off and put into servitude. Come, let us go to the house of the Lord, chapter 2, verse 3. And he's looking to a time in the future, the last days, in verse 2. Mm-hmm. The mountain of the Lord's temple will be established as chief among the mountains. It will be raised above. Then he goes, come, let us go to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. He will teach us his ways so that we may walk in his paths. And then he goes down, he will judge between nations and settle disputes. I mean, really, isn't that the main thing that takes our peace away? Is we got strife between people, we got and then he says they will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. I think part of this weight of the word peace is the fact that we can't get it from each other, really. The peace that we have that really is lasting peace comes from the Lord. It comes either from our learning his ways, and our conduct is influenced by what God is doing, or because we care for each other, we're taking care of the agenda between us. So if you get it uptight with me, we're going to talk about it. Mm-hmm. And reestablish the peace that was originally in our relationship. If everybody tried to do that, wow, wouldn't it change the world? I mean, it'd change our community. Yeah. It would change households. It would change the city politics. It would change your state politics. It would change your national politics. And if we could do it across the world, the problem is we can't. There's
Yeah.
one element that is always fracturing peace, and that's sin. It's the sin we do on an individual basis. It's the sin we do between people groups, families. There's neighbors that don't get along with each other. And so it continues to be eroded away. What's interesting is before Jesus came, Malachi points out, because I will, in chapter 2, because of you, I will rebuke your descendants. I will spread your faces on their faces. Awful. Do you know what that is? That's like excrement, like poo-poo. Okay? On your festivals. It's as if these things are going to be defiled. And where's the peace piece I saw? Revered in uprightness. Here it is. My covenant was with him. And that's Levi. My covenant of life and peace, I gave them to him. This calls for reverence. He revered me, and stood in awe of my name. True instructions were from his mouth. He walked with me in peace and uprightness and turned many from sin. So part of this peace is not only maintaining it, but bringing others to it. So it's more than the absence of conflict, and it flies in the face of war, but it also flies in the face of, I'll have it my way.
Yeah.
Because it's stirring us to a time when, like God walked with Adam and Eve in the garden, that tight relationship between God and his people. And it's major to try to maintain that on a daily basis. So how does that happen? Well, for me, I maintain better peace in my person if I maintain my relationship before God and, take care of my own sin before God, before others, take time in prayer and reflection, make sure that I have got my life in order. I can't expect anybody else to do what I'm not willing to do. So when I walk into my house, I can't expect everything to be perfect, any more perfect than I would leave it.
Yeah.
And so I walk in peace with my wife, realizing that she's got the same limitations I have. And I walk in peace in my community, recognizing that between us. I would nudge one more layer. Jesus is talked about in Isaiah 9 as being the Prince of Peace and pointing people to a relationship in Jesus Christ and finding that peace with him. I think probably one of the most telling times in my ministry of peace is when someone has been so tormented by what's going on in their life that they finally lay it all before Jesus and confess their sins and find that forgiveness and walk away from the altar in a whole different state. And that's peace. That's starting to put the broken pieces of our lives back together. I can't imagine that Paul had anything less than that in his mind when he was listing this out, love and then joy, and then he puts peace. And we can't really have love and joy unless we maintain peace. It's part of it. And so that's why when we talk about fruits of the Spirit, it's going to be there. We're going to make it there.
Yeah.
And it's there to help maintain it. Hey, have I left out some holes? Oh, yes. I was going to say, we'll get to that. What's interesting is when we talk about peace and we think about the fruit that's in the front in Genesis, and we think about those two trees, just remember that when we get back to chapter 22 of Revelation, those trees are there again. And notice that in chapter 22, verse 2, and the trees and the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. There will no longer be any curse. The throne of God and the Lamb will be in the city, and his servants will serve him. While peace isn't in that sign, I think that's, when I think of things that are not peaceful, I often think of war and what's going on between nations. And I realize that's talking about peace. That in the garden, one of the last things that's left over from this world will be that second tree, and there'll be healing for the nations from those trees.
Yeah. One thing I was going to add was when you were talking about if there's conflict between two people and building that peace up again, oftentimes what prevents that, what I've like experienced myself or witnessed with others, is like your own pride often gets in the way. Like you don't admit you're wrong, or you're stubborn. And
I have got a friend who talks about that, and he said pride is actually the taproot of all other sins.
Yeah.
And I believe him. There's a certain amount which we will not back down, and we sort of, and that is our pride.
Yeah.
It gets in the way of a lot of things. Good point. Because that part of the thing that breaks relationships is I've got to have it my way. And that's pride.
Yeah.
Or I'm right and you're wrong, and I won't listen to anything else besides my own point of view. That gets in the way. I think one of the, just taking that one step farther, is that when I live out what Jesus talked about in Matthew chapter 5, and like going the second mile in 5:39, and then loving my enemy. Like we're going to do that easy. That takes this peace thing to a deeper level, because then I've got to reevaluate how I'm working with people and how I think about people. You've heard it said, an eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. I tell you, don't resist the evil person. If someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to them the other also. This is a heart attitude that is sort of reversing. It's sort of becoming the victim, but it's becoming the victim for a purpose, because it's saying, okay, what is this you're trying to prove here by whooping me upside the head? What is this you're trying to prove here with this action? And if somebody wants to sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. That's contrary to our thinking. And I think that hits what you're talking about, that pride, because that would be going out of our way for the other person rather than for ourselves. I mean, a cloak would have been a majorly necessary garment. It's not like they had a full closet full of clothes like we do.
Yeah.
And sometimes I have too many of those. A cloak was a necessity for the cold nights of that era and that area. If someone forces you to go 1 mile, you go with him 2. If he gives you to give to the one who asks you, and don't turn away the one who wants to borrow from you. And then Jesus adds another layer. You have heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. And I tell you, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. It's easy to pray for the guy you know and you care for, but he's saying love, and this is not little bit love. This is agape love. That's sacrificial love, like the first one, love, joy, peace. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. The result is that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. I mean, is that our goal?
Yeah.
I think so. That we would be identified with the Father. And when you think about that, and in terms of peace, can we move in this world with the same intentions that God does? That's peace. God once in a while has to discipline us, but he disciplines us so that the outcome eventually will be our wholeness. And not only our wholeness, but the wholeness of others. Shalom, peace. So it's pretty major.
Yeah.
Major commodity. And I tell you, it is really hard to live in peace with all people all the time.
Yeah.
There's some ornery there's just some ornery thing. I really think this displays why Ephesians 6, 9 and 10 are so important, because if we make this shift like we do here with love your enemies, it's really displaying the fact that we're no longer battling against flesh and blood, but we're understanding that this is a spiritual warfare, principalities and powers of this dark world. Our battle is not with each other anymore. It's with the spiritual forces around us. And that kind of stuff, pride would be one of them, but it is a spiritual warfare instead of being, well, I'm going to beat you up kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know? It's different that way. So if we could start thinking about peace in the terms of a spiritual, it's a spiritual condition on our part. It's something we cultivate and maintain in our personal lives, a peace that is beyond understanding. We ask God for it as an anointing, if you will, and then we practice it on a daily basis with everybody around us so that we're seeking the wholeness of each other instead of, I'm going to beat you up kind of thing. I'm going to get whatever I can from you. And that changes our attitude. And I really believe that's at the root of the cultural tradition of the Hebrews saying, Shalom, my friend, either whether we're greeting each other or whether we're saying goodbye to each other. Shalom, my friend.
Yeah. I just have a couple things. When it says, love your neighbor, hate your enemy, but I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. I think it's a lot harder to hate somebody if you're praying for them.
It is.
Like,
yeah.
If you're, raising them up in prayer every day, then it's awfully hard to hate them.
Right.
But
and it also changed our attitude towards whatever they're doing at the time.
Yeah.
Towards us. I remember the story of a little old lady who all of a sudden had a guy at her front door with a gun and coming in the front door, and she said, I love you in Jesus' name. So, in Jesus' name, I pray for you. The story goes that the guy dropped his gun and left, and she prayed for him, and so I don't know whether it's going to work every time somebody comes at your house with a gun, but obviously it changes. She immediately went to that. I think what strikes me in the story is she immediately prayed for the other guy. And even though the other fellow was ready to take her life if necessary to get what he wanted.
Yeah.
And that was definitely aggression. And she was coming at that with peace.
Yeah. I mean, how many of us are either like fight or flight there? And
right.
She's neither. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Unless she's in the spirit and say, I'm fighting that. Yes. Get that.
She's
get that spirit out of here.
Level, yeah.
But she wasn't coming from the pride piece.
Yeah.
She was saying, I'm here for you. And it's a neat story. But when we think about peace, if we can change our understanding from that, it's absence of conflict, the absence of war, peace actually goes much deeper. And its roots need to be deep in our heart for us to live that fruit of the Spirit out in a daily way.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's all we have for you today. Thank you, Don, for bringing that to us. Very good.
And if you have questions about it, send them in.
Yep.
Because I surely didn't exhaust that topic.
We'll get around to patience, which should be a fun.
I can't hardly wait.
Don will get some work on his patience before he,
there you go.
Before he presents the next one. But we will see you next time.
Lord willing.
Thank you for joining us for this podcast. Feel free to become part of this ministry by sharing it with others. Our goal is to help each other grow deeper in our understanding of who God is and His calling to us in our daily lives. Thank you again for joining us, and may God bless your day.